All right. Hello and welcome to another Consolidated Credit webinar here. I'm joined with our Executive Director, Jeffrey Schwartz, and Lori Pollack. And today we're going to be talking about financial health and financial education and the new online platform that we have, which is called Knowledge of Financial Education. So again, thanks for joining us. We'll get started with the webinar, and towards the end we'll have time for some questions. And that should be it for the day.
That sounds great. We're happy to be here, Ben.
Good.
And thank you for having me, Ben.
Not a problem. Okay, so we'll start off with, well, what is KOFE? Well, it's a way to say knowledge of financial education, which is something that we feel is becoming more and more, needed out there. It's essentially, a one-stop personal finance platform. So it provides educational financial content, courses, and access to free financial coaching. So for our partners, it provides the visual data, and it can provide some insights into the financial interests of users. And we've done our best to try and present it in a way that's easily accessible for Canadians. So essentially, if you can register for an email address, then you can register for KOFE. So our thinking there was that, if you've got time for a coffee once or twice a week, or maybe you're one of those people that grabs a Starbucks every day, then you've probably got the time to improve your financial health, just spending, time with that coffee maybe on this platform. So I wanted to kind of start things off here with Jeff. What led Consolidated Credit to develop this rather in-depth educational platform?
Well, Ben, I think that truthfully, that's exactly what it is. We had another educational platform, and I think we wanted to develop something that had greater depth and detail into it. So we said, well, what can we do to add more content to that platform and come out with something that was really quite robust, something that had better tools and resources that allowed individuals to be more interactive with the platform so that they could really get what they needed out of it. If they were interested in one particular area, well, then they could kind of zoom in on that area and get more information about that specific area in their life that required some attention as it relates to their personal finances. So it was really all about more interaction and greater flexibility.
Great. So Lori, with all of your experience in financial education, how or maybe where do you see KOFE being implemented?
Well, I think Jeff just used a couple of words that I think are incredibly important here: interactive and personalized. I think the more that individuals have the chance to interact and either with each other, with something that speaks back to them, and to have something personalized that keeps them more engaged. And I also think that your targets of workplace and organizations where there are lots of people and lots of financial stress are great target groups.
Great. So it's not just as simple as, handing someone, a budgeting booklet and say there all your problems are solved. This way they can, kind of look for what they're interested in and take it from there, right?
And grow it and just increase their knowledge base.
Great.
So I think, absolutely, the more information they have and the more of an opportunity to interact, I think the better they'll be.
Okay, good. All right, so we'll move along. So who needs KOFE, or who needs, some knowledge of financial education? Well, financial stress is a real issue for way too many Canadians, and I don't really see that it's getting much better. There's a real need for this type of education, and we just need to look at the latest headlines to see how bad it's getting. According to an M&P poll, 46% of Canadians are only $200 or less away from being insolvent at month's end. It doesn't get much better with the CMHC. Current debt to income ratios have risen to, I think it was 178.5%. So, consumer debt levels are rising year over year. Cost of living, cost of borrowing. So when we're asked who needs KOFE, I'd say at least half of everyone out there, or maybe, everyone out there in an ideal world. There's also students. I could see this being a great resource for students. Not only do they need to prepare for student life, they moved out of the house, they're away, they have to pay for their own cell phone and internet now maybe. They also need to, start budgeting, because when they get out of school, they're going to have to, pay for all of their bills and a lot of them, student debt after graduation as well. Employees, employers, we just kind of touched on a couple of those points. I feel that many employees are affected by financial stress, and they're probably bringing that to work. So I think that can affect productivity. It certainly affects the person's focus. Employee attendance can suffer because of it. And something I hear quite often is, marital issues are often, financial ones. So if it is a marital issue, when you dig a little deeper, maybe it is a financial one. So maybe something like this would be useful there. And Laura, you'd mentioned, community organizations, their clients or their members, they can benefit for the same reasons. Um, I'd also added financial institutions there. So I think like banks, maybe some of the smaller credit unions, they're able to help their members become more successful with their personal financial decisions or their financial making or planning. Sorry. Uh, Also, they could use it as a training tool. I mean, this is kind of a one-stop shop for that sort of thing. So, I think it could be used as a way to set up members to have better conversations, maybe with a financial advisor or financial planner. If they have children going into school or retirement is coming up, that sort of thing. So, Lori, I'd like to start with you this time. Hearing about those statistics, how have you seen the role of financial education change over the years? And, where do you think it's heading in the future?
I think one of the things that we're realizing is financial education is, while it's very broad in what it encompasses, it's also very grassroots. Financial education at one point, I think, always meant retirement funds and stock markets and housing. But unless people, to your point, unless individuals understand the importance of budgeting, you're not going to be buying stocks, and you're not going to be investing in stock markets, and probably not going to be buying a house because you haven't had the ability or the knowledge to be able to save for that. So I think the role is changing in that it's more encompassing, and that we realize everything that financial education really includes. And I think it's also we're starting to see it starting at younger ages, more piggy banks for kids, more understanding, more even games for children to get them involved in what is money. What does a dollar buy? Families becoming more involved. I think one of the greatest stories I read recently was a father came home from work and cashed his paycheck and put the cash on the table and sat his family down, said, okay, this is what I make a month, and this is what this costs, and this is what this costs. And so sometimes it has to be a visual where you have to see it to understand it. But I think the more we talk about it and the more we understand what everything is that's included in our finances, that cup of coffee that you go to the coffee shop for, do we need that every day? When we start to realize what a bite all these little things take out of our resources, I think we can start to understand more. And I think it's just going to snowball, be in schools, in the workplace. So you're getting individuals along the age spectrum at every age, from as young as we can until as old as we can, because the need for financial education never stops. It changes, but it never stops.
Right. I remember growing up thinking, money comes from the ATM. So when I needed
That's
more
right.
money, Mom, let's go to the green machine and take out some money. So good points there.
And it's also something that that's why I thought that article about the family sitting down, because people don't like to talk about finances. That was something that I grew up, you didn't make a phone call after 8 o'clock at night, and you never asked anybody what they paid for anything.
Good. So Jeff, again, looking at those same sort of statistics, what would you say Canadians need to do to curb these rising debt levels? I think when I started here, the current Canadian debt-to-income ratio was closer to 163%, and now it's at 178. That's a 15.5 rise in 3 years. So, what's going on? What do we need to do?
That is huge, and I'm going to go back to one of the things that Lori just said is it really needs to be our dealing with this debt level and the increase in debt level needs to be at a grassroots level, and it really needs to be done at an individual level. And quite frankly, those, as I said, those numbers are scary. And if I had some specific advice around how to take a step forward and how to move forward to improve your situation, the one thing I say, and I typically say it after the holiday season, but is give your plastic a rest. I mean, we're all paying for everything with plastic. Let's just give it a rest. Let's put it away. Let's not even have it in our wallet. Let's give it a rest where we can, and find a way to kind of go through our daily lives without that plastic, if at all possible. Or maybe plastic's the wrong term. Maybe just our debit card. Now, why I'm saying this is because so often I see that people go on these short-term binges where they give it a rest, and then all of a sudden there's an unexpected expense that pops up, and for that one step forward, they've now taken two steps back. And it could be something as simple as your child needs some dental work, or you've had a major repair on your car, or you've had a family member require some immediate medical attention. You've got to step in, maybe take some time off work. All these things are unexpected expenses or potential for expenses that you've got to go into debt for. And I'm going to get on a bit of a soapbox here, because I think it's important that everybody listening to this understands is we used to save back in the 70s and 80s at a rate in the teens and even close to 20%. So, which meant that high teens or 20% of each of our paychecks went into savings. And then that's no longer the case. And for the longest period of time, that's been in and around 5% or less. So what that means to me is that no one's saving. So they're not creating that buffer when that unexpected expense comes, and they're going further and further into debt as a result. And I mean, there's all sorts of demographic issues that we're seeing where people are paying for their parents that they might not otherwise have had to do, and parents are paying for the kids that really should be on their own. So we're seeing more and more of this as time goes on. And unless you have some savings, unless you have that buffer built in, you're not going to be able to manage those expenses, and you're going to go further into debt. Now, around savings, I hear this all the time. Well, how can you expect me to save if I've got nothing in my account left over at the end of the month and I still haven't met all my bills? Well, let's take a look at this, and maybe it's your mindset as to how you're trying to save. And there's a phrase out there, and it couldn't be more true, is pay yourself first. And what that means is before you do anything, before you pay any bills, before you go grocery shopping, take a small amount of each and every paycheck and put that aside. And then what ultimately happens is you're forced to deal with the rest. And you would be surprised at how effective you can be, even by saving a small amount, and you're forced to deal with the rest that you have left over for all your expenses, for all your car payments, for your mortgages and your rent. And it's amazing how far you can make dollars go. Now, once you've gotten good at that, once you've built that into a bit of a habit, you can start to increase that amount. And your goal is going to be that you want to put somewhere between 6 months and even 9 months of everyday expenses aside in that emergency fund if you can do it. And it's going to take time, but ultimately, if you do it, you're not going to have to go into debt for those unexpected expenses. And I think that's where we as Canadians need to go so that we see potentially some of these debt levels drop.
Right. I can't, tell you how many times I've been talking to clients about that sort of savings goal, and I said, why don't you just try 5% of every paycheck? And typically what happens is, I'll follow up, and it turns out that 5%, yeah, it did become easy for them, just like you said. So, talk about a way to reduce financial stress, right? Having that emergency savings tucked away is certainly going to help you. So that leads me right to my next slide. I think some of this content here, no matter what type of learner you are, you're going to be able to find, some way to leverage what you've learned there and put it into action. And it's not just, let's read about the stock market and become an expert. You have to start somewhere. So the financial content, we've kind of developed that content almost as, for lack of a better word, like snackable content. It's short, it's to the point. The educational courses, they're short, they're sweet. Each sort of module, I think there's 16 modules. There's 3 to 4 topics each, and there's like a 1 or 2 minute video. It's a funny little credit ninja, and he jumps around and teaches you about different financial topics. But the education piece is still there. There's a short kind of comprehension, and then finally they do that multiple choice quiz. The modules aren't meant to reinvent the wheel, but to get users thinking about 1 or 2 strategies, such as maybe we can save 5% of every paycheck. And then at the end, they get that unique certificate. So that kind of speaks to what Lori was saying with the individuality. You finished this course because you were interested in it, and now you have proof of that. And then there still are people out there who do like to pick up a phone and talk to people. A lot of people joke about how no one even wants to send an email anymore. Everything needs to be done over text. But if you do need to speak to a coffee coach, they're essentially going to receive what I would call productive financial counseling. So they're just going to, examine ways to see that, can you get the most out of um, what you have, like exactly like that example of putting your literally putting your paycheck on the table. How can you make the most out of that? So I just wonder, maybe Lori, if you had any points to bring across, and then maybe Jeff, if you wanted to finish off with one or two points about coaching or the courses, or maybe some of the content that you found on there that you like.
Um, well, I'll chime in here, and I think it's organizations are made of people who have similar interests, and so you'd think that everybody cares about everybody else, and everybody wants to succeed at whatever it is they're doing. And within a company, everybody's focus is the success of the company. The company succeeds, then we all have jobs, and we all have someplace to go every morning. And in both instances, I think you feel like you're part of a family. And financial stress causes so much damage to the individual. Financial stress can lead to mental health issues. It can lead to physical issues. So the more financially stable we all feel, and being financially stable doesn't mean that we have a Swiss bank account. It means that, as Jeff said, we can cover 6 to 9 months of expenses and be comfortable doing that. So I think if an organization or a company can work it so that they can offer coffee and make their employees, not make it so that their financial stresses aren't overtaking their lives, and they can function well, they become a better person in the organization, they become a better employee, they're more engaged, and that leads to better success for everybody. So I think the workplace or an organization is a tremendous place to have financial education available.
For sure. Jeff, any thoughts?
Yeah, I want to touch on the coaching aspect, if that makes sense, Ben, here. Our coaching is probably very similar to what the credit counselors are already doing. And I say that because in many instances, our counselors get so entwined with the individual sessions that they're covering a lot of the subjects that would come up in the coaching sessions themselves. However, where it may be a little different on the coaching side is that the goals are going to be a little bit different. So depending on the situation that an individual is in, different conversations may come up. And ultimately, people want to understand that, okay, I'm handling my debt now, but I want to do more. I want to achieve certain goals, or I have certain things that I want to accomplish in short term, in medium term, in long term. And I'm managing my debt, but if I didn't have that debt, or if I could redeploy my finances in a different way, I might be able to accomplish my goals much quicker, and I might be further ahead in reaching those goals. So, and some of those goals might be retirement, some of them might be buying a house, it could be vacation, or it could even be I want to start thinking about my child's education and start putting some money away for that. But I've got this kind of looming debt service I've got to make every month. So, what's the best way to tackle that debt and at the same time start moving towards achieving those goals? So, our coaches look at the individual situation, understand and probe towards what those goals are, look at their current financial situation and what opportunities may exist. And from there, it's either up to them on a do-it-yourself type method, or they could be reaching out to other financial professionals to get them on their way with respect to some investment advice. But at least they've got that background knowledge, and they're in a far better situation to contribute to something like that because they've gone through some coaching with our coaches.
Good. So it's like almost like a 101 approach. We don't need to jump right into the advanced level stuff. Let's kind of start with something a little bit more 101, I guess. So yeah, engagement. That's the name of the game, especially with coffee. If you want to see the results, you need to put different things into action. So with the traffic, that could be things like these calculators here, and I mean they're not your traditional savings calculator. I mean some of them we have right there, like cigarettes per year savings. until someone really sees how much they might be spending on that pack of cigarettes a day, that could be their light bulb moment that, wow, that's what I spend that much on these things. So, we can track that. We see that. We see what people are using. For downloads, downloading the booklets, downloading the infographics, budgeting balance act, cleaning a credit report, those are directly tracked, and that, kind of leads to some insights on what's going on with this coffee platform. So participation is a huge part of it. And that could be just something as simple as watching a video or having an in-depth conversation with a credit coach or a coffee coach. So those courses that I'd mentioned in the last slide, these are a great way to track and promote success. So we call it the Credit Dojo, but in reality there are a whole host of modules that can cover everything from basic budget fortification all the way to mortgage mastery. So I kind of mentioned, the different topics for each module, the comprehension piece, the multiple choice quiz. So, why not step into the Credit Dojo or promote the Credit Dojo? And, you can become a master of, not only the basics that we see there, art of saving, budget fortification, but, some people might want to be interested in the savings milestones for the path to retirement, or, other people might want to learn a little bit more about home equity, building home equity, that sort of thing. So that leads me to another question for our educational expert. Lori, how do you see this type of personalized education fitting into an organization or a company that might be interested in coffee? And how could it help employees? How could it help members? How could it be seen almost as a benefit?
I think the way it fits is just, again, the more you can help an individual who has financial questions or financial stress in their lives, the better the organization, the better the company. Everybody becomes stronger because your whole is only as good as the pieces. So the stronger the pieces are to your organization or company, then the better the company does. And then I think the more people, they're more engaged, they're less distracted, and they feel better about what they're doing. I think offering this and having the financial coaches who contribute to coffee and who make coffee what it is incredibly important, because these are people who are trained, and they're not just trained and knowledgeable about the financial aspect. They're sympathetic and they understand what an individual is going through. So this is, if they choose to do a one-on-one counseling or one-on-one coaching, they're talking to somebody who can really empathize with what they're going through. And they walk away feeling better, and they feel better about a company that helps them feel better, right? We all feel better when we know that we're valued, and by providing a service like that, you're telling your employees or members of your organization that, hey, we care about you, and here's something we can offer that's here for you to help you. So I think the more we can give any employee or any member of an organization or anybody, any individual, to help them feel better, the better we all do.
Great. That was a great segue into the next one. So we kind of learned a little bit more about these coaches. So as a coffee partner, speaking with the coaches is always unlimited and free. Sometimes people feel limited. There's a 1-hour conversation with a financial planner or a financial advisor, but not in this case. We want them to reach out to coaches. We want them to get the information that they need. We also include a toll-free number that's dedicated to the organization. So whatever company or organization you have, it's going to have a unique toll-free number for you to promote, and that's just another area for us to, track the engagement, track the usage of this kind of thing. So essentially, like we talked about, or like Jeff had mentioned earlier, they provide actionable financial advice, things that you can put into action right now. It's not, let's talk about it in 5 years or 25 years, that sort of thing. So that, we've already talked about these things. It directly improves productivity. A focused employee is a better employee and often, a safer employee. So reducing that financial stress is also going to help with other areas like absenteeism. So the coffee coaching, it sounds like another great benefit to offer. Like you said, it's someone who's also sympathetic but also knowledgeable. Basic budgeting, credit reporting. How long is this going to be on my credit report? I made a mistake on my, cell phone bill 5 years ago. When's that going to get cleaned up? That sort of thing. So they can talk about all sorts of different things. So I have a question for Jeff. Before we get into the analytical side of it, I'm just wondering, you're kind of the big data guy here. So why don't you kind of go over a minute and we'll just kind of cover these reports that we provide, the detailed reports on, the aggregate website data, what users are doing. So I guess my question is, how can this be leveraged by maybe employers or program managers at organizations?
Well, I think, thanks, Ben, but I think really seeing is believing, and KOFE was set up to do that. KOFE was set up to be measurable, and in so many ways, if we can track it, we can measure it. And if we can measure it, we can learn the impact that it has in so many different aspects of our employees' lives and the way we run our organization. I think you alluded to it earlier. Productivity can be impacted, absenteeism, areas of interest on behalf of your employees, problem areas when certain people are inquiring about a certain aspect on the website. That's the potential that there might be a problem or a concern in that area. And then potentially we can even prevent, or better yet, preempt these concerns and issues by pushing content out there. And here's a perfect example. If we sense that our employees are struggling come January and February when their credit card statements come in, and we know that's an issue, then perhaps in October or November, we can provide, or even as early as soon as February and March when the holidays have ended, we can provide resources and tools that will help people plan their year so that they don't have to take on any additional debt and they've got it covered in cash by the time that the holidays roll around. And who knows, we could potentially, based on who the users are, we could even link other methods to cost savings throughout the year. So if this is of an interest and you're going to be doing something like that over the holidays, maybe there's some cost savings or even vacation planning, and it could be deals that are coming across because that's of interest to them. So we can gain so much information from what people are visiting, what they're doing, what their reaction is, how they've scored in certain areas. So this is one way that we can really help our partners gain a better insight into what's interesting for their employees and where some of their concerns are. Which kind of leads to the next thing that we're seeing, and we've had some tremendous feedback from our partners already, and that is, employers are always looking for new and different and innovative ways to engage their employees. And KOFE can be a tremendous testing ground for these ideas. So if we want to throw something out there and see how people react, how employees react, we can gauge that, and we can often do it through the reporting mechanism on KOFE. And so I'm thinking that this is an excellent opportunity that comes in a box for these employers that says, okay, yeah, I can get all this information, and I really just have to have somebody kind of log in and take it from there.
Awesome. So like a plug and play option.
Exactly.
All right. So how does somebody access KOFE? That's another kind of big question that we have. But registration is easy. Like I said earlier, if you can register for an email address, that's essentially the computer literacy level that you're going to need. So you head over to the Coffee Time website. You can register as a new user, and then you're ready to start entering the credit dojo, watch a video. Basically you can start planning, start setting a smart financial goal, something that's relevant, timely. You can also be ready when life happens, whether you need to speak to a coffee coach or watch a video, download a booklet or something like that. It's all there. So it really is as simple as a few clicks of the mouse. So a couple questions that we have, and we do get quite regularly. The first one I have is there a cost for KOFE? So I think I can handle that one. Yes, we do have a cost. It's priced on an annual subscription basis of $1 per user. But we're always willing to discuss pricing. If that price is going to be a barrier for an organization, we understand that not every potential partner out there has the budget of a big bank or a corporation. So, we can certainly discuss slimming the site down, or maybe, just drilling down a little bit more on kind of what they're looking for in KOFE, and we can price accordingly. So another question that I get quite a bit is KOFE secure? Is all the information kept private and confidential? And the short answer is yes, but I think Jeff might have a little bit longer answer towards our privacy policy than that. Is there anything you want to?
Ben, if you're insinuating that I'm long-winded, yeah, maybe I'm a little long-winded. But
well,
nonetheless, I mean, truth be told, that Consolidated, we take everyone's personal information very, very seriously. We take the care of it very seriously. If they're going to entrust us, they need to know that this information is not shared nor sold based on them just registering, and it's kept behind layers and layers of security. And we do that because we want to make sure that we've been entrusted with this and they can feel comfortable that their information is safe. I mean, often I've been on a site and then like a few hours later, I'm getting a whole series of different emails after I've been on that one site, and I know where someone's passed along my information to somewhere else. And that you can rest assured that that's not actually happening when you log into a Consolidated site. So I want them to feel very comfortable in moving this forward and making this part of their wellness and/or HR plan.
Great. And another question that we get, and this one sounds tailor-made for Lori, is why isn't basic personal finance taught in schools or taught more in schools? I remember, I think I was in high school, and they had a workplace level math credit that offered a small little couple units on budgeting, financing, loans, leasing, but that was about it. So, maybe what age should we begin these topics? When should we introduce financial education? Should it be taught in schools? Those are things that I hear quite regularly from people I work with.
Sure. I mean, I think what we're starting to see is more and more need for financial education to be taught in schools. And whether it's you can't graduate from high school without some sort of financial literacy course, or they start teaching it all the way along the spectrum, I think that stakeholders are understanding the importance of this. I know a few years back in Canada, the Financial Consumer Agency of Canada met with consultants, and they've implemented a national strategy. So the need is known, and I think more and more organizations, whether they're banks, governmental organizations, schools, and I think more and more people are realizing the importance and the need to implement, and something like KOFE just highlights how important this really is, and the need for even, employees and organizations to bring this to their membership and their employees, because it is something important. And then you learn it at work, you can take it home to your family. I mean,
Sure.
The way you can spread this knowledge is never ending.
Great. Jeff, any thoughts on personal finance in schools or basic, budgeting classes or anything like that?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the question, Ben.
Oh, I just asked Jeff if he had any thoughts there on, teaching personal finance in school or incorporating it at a younger age.
Well, I think we're headed there. We're not there completely yet, and I know there's been some legislation and movements towards this, and still in Canada it's too bad, but it's a bit piecemeal, and some people are doing it on an individual basis. But I think we're heading in the direction. But if I had one personal bias, I think it's just moving too slowly.
All right, and not to mention, teachers aren't perfect either. Maybe, some teachers organizations could use KOFE themselves. But those
and
are
that's something else that's really important for us to all understand is, as uncomfortable as individuals that we might be in talking about finances, we need to get teachers comfortable with teaching it, because they're not going to teach something they're not comfortable teaching or speaking about. So maybe we do need to do a better job of educating the educators.
Yeah, I know we always hear about class sizes are increasing, school budgets are shrinking, they're losing jobs. So, yeah, maybe they're not comfortable themselves. So that could be certainly a big piece of it there. So, I think that's pretty much everything for today. We covered most of the topics I wanted to take care of. So if your organization is interested in a KOFE partnership, go ahead and contact me. I'd be happy to talk to you more about it. So I hope you enjoyed the webinar, and feel free to contact me after if you're interested in learning more about KOFE. And again, thanks to Jeff and Lori for taking the time out of their day to speak with us. We had some great insights there. So thanks a lot, guys.
Thank you both. Bye. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.